Walk into almost any elite, high-tuition American kindergarten, and you'll immediately notice the environment. The cheap plastic toys are gone. Instead, the rooms are filled with pristine, heavy, premium wooden furniture. Almost all of these wooden shelves, chairs, and play blocks come from a single manufacturer called Community Playthings. They hold an absolute grip on the high-end early childhood education market. This multi-million-dollar empire belongs to the Bruderhof, a radical Christian commune that strictly rejects personal wealth and the pursuit of profit. Step onto their property and you find a quiet agrarian society. Members wear modest, plain clothing in muted earth tones and deliberately avoid the flashy, consumer-driven aesthetics of the outside world, which presents a massive contradiction. How do these two completely opposite realities, an elite, hyper-consumerist education system and an isolated, wealth-rejecting commune, rely entirely on each other to survive? To figure out how a strict pacifist sect cornered a lucrative capitalist toy market, we have to look back at their origins, which began with a desperate flight to stay alive. In 1920, a German theologian named Eberhard Arnold founded the first Bruderhof community. The group was built on strict, non-negotiable principles, absolute pacifism, and a total rejection of personal property. Within a decade, those beliefs put them on a direct collision course with the rising Nazi regime. Because of their pacifism, the Bruderhof refused to swear loyalty to Adolf Hitler or serve in the German armed forces. The state's response was swift. In 1937, the secret police, known as the Gestapo, raided the community, confiscated their property, and gave the members exactly 48 hours to flee the country. They became global refugees, eventually securing passage to South America. By 1941, they had settled in the Chaco region of Paraguay, attempting to build a self-sustaining life in an incredibly harsh, remote environment. The severe conditions in Paraguay ultimately led the community to seek a new home. In 1954, they migrated north, establishing a permanent farming settlement in the rural woods of upstate New York. By adhering strictly to their nonviolent principles, they had spent decades on the run. They arrived in America essentially penniless, meaning they had to figure out a completely new way to keep their community afloat. The Bruderhof operates on a system called the Community of Goods. Members do not own private property. They receive zero salary for their labor, and they have no personal bank accounts. Instead, any revenue generated flows directly into a single communal pot, which then redistributes resources to members based entirely on their physical and medical needs. They also maintain a strict physical separation from mainstream consumer culture. You won't find televisions inside Bruderhof homes, and members do not use smartphones or the internet in their personal family spaces. But isolating hundreds of people from the mainstream economy in the middle of the United States creates a massive financial burden. They still have to pay thousands of dollars in property taxes, build their own schools, and maintain their internal infrastructure. When they first settled in New York, the Bruderhof tried to rely on traditional agriculture, but they quickly realized that selling crops from a rocky upstate farm simply could not generate the cash required to sustain their growing population. Facing imminent bankruptcy in the 1950s, they had to pivot. Using basic hand tools, community members started cutting and sanding simple wooden blocks and toy trucks, hoping to sell a few to local buyers to keep the lights on. The Bruderhof's internal culture of intense discipline naturally produced highly durable craftsmanship, and by pure coincidence, they launched this effort right alongside the massive post-war baby boom, when funding for American early childhood education was skyrocketing. What began as a desperate makeshift way to avoid losing their farm accidentally laid the groundwork for a corporate monopoly in premium daycare furniture. Today, the scale of Community Playthings is staggering. Walk onto the factory floor and you'll experience total visual whiplash. Members wearing traditional, modest clothing, operating state-of-the-art automated machinery. High-precision CNC machines and custom-coded logistics software drive the factory floor, allowing a community that avoids the internet at home to dominate a global supply chain. Yet despite bringing in millions of dollars in revenue, none of that cash ever touches an individual worker's hands. Every dollar is absorbed back into the community to provide care for their elderly, educate their children, and fully fund their isolated way of life. This corporate engine functions as a protective shield, generating the massive capital required to keep their religious community entirely separate from the modern world. Which brings us right back to those pristine, high-tuition kindergarten classrooms in New York City. The Bruderhof goes to extreme lengths to shield their own children from the influences of modern American culture, keeping them away from screens, advertising, and hyper-consumerism. But to afford the sheer cost of that strict isolation, they have to physically manufacture the exact environments where modern capitalist children spend their most formative years. The Bruderhof's absolute rejection of the modern capitalist economy only survives because they completely mastered it.